The SOS was meant for allies. It summoned the Deathworlders' fleet of doom. The quantum transmitter was never supposed to reach that far. Ambassador Aisha of the Pelen sovereignty pressed her slender, six-fingered hands against the console as the station shook from another impact. Outside the viewport, her world of Pele's prime burned. The Kraven Armada, 30 warships of a predatory empire that had terrorized this sector for generations, had arrived without warning, without provocation, and with absolutely no mercy. "How long until the collective responds?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. The Pelen were not warriors. In 8,000 years of civilization, they had never fired a weapon in anger. They were artists, philosophers, botanists who had turned 17 moons into gardens. Violence was something they studied in historical archives, not something they lived. Junior Technician Vorn looked up from his station, his bioluminescent markings flickering with distress. The message reached the Tethron Collective Fleet, Ambassador. But they're 14 days away at maximum speed. We have. He swallowed hard. We have maybe 14 hours. 14 hours before the Kraven breached their planetary shields. 14 hours before millions of Pelen, gentle, peaceful beings who had never harmed anyone, were slaughtered or enslaved. The station shook again. Aisha watched another orbital platform explode in the distance, debris scattering like dying stars. "There has to be someone closer," she said. "Expand the transmission range. Emergency band. Send to anyone who can hear us. Ambassador, if we expand that far, the signal could reach unclaimed space. Unknown species. We don't know what. We know what the Kraven will do. That's enough." Her voice was firm. "Send it." Vorn's hands moved across the controls, and the quantum transmitter, meant for communication within the collective's established networks, suddenly broadcast across hundreds of light years in every direction. The message was simple: peaceful civilization under attack, requesting immediate military assistance, coordinates attached. What Lyss Andra didn't know was that her signal, boosted far beyond its intended range, had just reached a small monitoring station at the edge of a system marked in collective databases as unexplored but potentially hazardous. A system called Sol. Captain Jackson Jax Rivera was 3 days into what was supposed to be a quiet patrol route when the signal hit. He'd been nursing a cup of coffee that could strip paint, the kind only military ships seemed to produce, and reviewing supply requisites when every alert on the bridge of the Indomitable started screaming at once. "Captain!" Lieutenant Chen called from communications. "We're receiving a distress signal. Non-Terran origin." "Sir, I've never seen this encryption before." Jax was already moving toward her station, coffee forgotten. "Location? 17 light years. The signal's strong, Captain. Really strong. Whoever sent it is desperate." "What's it say?" Chen's fingers flew across her console, the ship's AI working to decode the alien transmission. Translating now, it's a request for military aid. They're under attack by something called the Kraven. Civilian population at risk. They're asking for... She paused. "They're asking for any Allied fleet in range to respond immediately." "Allied?" Jax's second-in-command, Commander Sarah Okonkwo, stepped up beside him. "Captain, we've never made contact with this species. We're not allied with anyone out here." "Maybe not officially," Jax said, studying the data streaming across the displays. "But they said, any allied fleet. They're not asking for specific allegiances. They're asking for help." "Could be a trap," Okonkwo cautioned. "Lure us in with a distress call, ambush us when we arrive." "Could be." "Chen, what's the Indomitable status?" "Full combat readiness, sir. We've got the Valkyrie and the Maelstrom within quick jump range. The rest of 7th Fleet could be here in 6 hours." Jax looked at the data again. The signal was being transmitted with increasing desperation. Whoever these people were, they were running out of time. And if it was genuine, if there really were civilians dying while he sat here running calculations? "Send to 7th Fleet Command. Potential first contact situation, hostile action in progress against unknown species." AM proceeding to investigate with indomitable battle group. Recommend full fleet follow at maximum speed. He turned to his helmsman. Plot a jump to those coordinates. Battle stations. If we're walking into a trap, we're walking in ready. Alarms sounded throughout the ship. 3 minutes later, the USS Indomitable and her 2 escort destroyers tore a hole in space-time and vanished. They emerged into hell. Holy shit, someone whispered on the bridge, and Jax didn't reprimand them because he was thinking the same thing. The system before them was beautiful, or had been. Multiple moons gleamed like jewels, covered in what scanners identified as cultivated vegetation. The main planet was a work of art, cities that looked more like gardens than urban centers, orbital stations designed with aesthetic grace that made Earth's utilitarian construction look barbaric. And all of it was burning. 30 massive warships, angular, brutal things covered in weapons, surrounded the planet. They were systematically destroying the orbital infrastructure while bombarding the planetary shields below. Debris fields suggested they'd already eliminated any defensive platforms. Scan those attackers, Jax ordered. Scanning, Captain. Those ships are packing serious firepower. Energy weapons, kinetic bombardment, some kind of plasma artillery. Their shields are strong too. And they've seen us. 6 of the attacking ships were already turning toward the human vessels. Threat assessment? Their ships are bigger than ours, better shielded, comparable weapons. We're outgunned, sir. Jax smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Only if we fight fair. Chin, send a message. All frequencies. Tell them this is the United Earth Space Navy, and they have one chance to stand down and withdraw. Sir, they're responding. Audio only. Translating. The voice that came through was harsh, guttural, filtered through translation software that made it sound even more menacing. Humans, we have heard of you. The mad apes from the death world. You are far from your territory. This is Kraven business. Leave or be destroyed with the others. Okonkwo leaned in close. Captain, we're seriously outnumbered. If we engage... We didn't come 17 light years to watch civilians die, Jax said quietly. Then, louder, Chin, send reply, we don't negotiate with bullies. You have 60 seconds to break orbit and leave this system. After that, we start breaking things. The Kraven response was to open fire. Evasive maneuvers. Jax shouted as the bridge erupted into controlled chaos. Return fire. Target their weapons arrays. Show these bastards what a death world builds for war. The Indomitable lived up to her name. She rolled hard, her inertial dampeners screaming at the edge of tolerance, and the Kraven's first salvo passed through empty space where she'd been. Her counterfire was precise, magnetically accelerated tungsten rods moving at a fraction of light speed, each one carrying kinetic energy equivalent to a nuclear weapon. The first rod punched through a Kraven ship's shields like they weren't there and tore through the hull end to end. The ship didn't explode. It simply stopped being structurally sound and folded in on itself. 1 down. Tactical called out. 5 still inbound. The destroyers Valkyrie and Maelstrom joined the fight, their smaller frames making them harder to hit. They wove between the Kraven ships like fighters, their weapons chewing through shields and armor. The Maelstrom's captain, a crazy woman named Torres who'd once surfed a nuclear shockwave for fun, brought her ship within knife-fighting range and unleashed her entire missile payload directly into a Kraven vessel's engine core. 2 down. But the Kraven were adapting, and their reinforcements from the planet were arriving. Captain, we've got 12 more ships breaking off from the bombardment. We're about to be swarmed. Jax checked the tactical display. 7th Fleet was still 4 hours out. The Pelen, if that's who the victims were dying below. And his 3 ships were about to face 15 Kraven warships. He opened a ship-wide channel. All hands, this is the captain. I won't lie to you. We're outnumbered 5-1 against an enemy that outguns us. But we're not here to win pretty. We're here to buy time for innocents to survive. So let's show these predatory bastards why you don't mess with Deathworlders. Engineering, I need everything the reactor can give me. Weapons, fire at will. Helm, get creative. The crew's response was immediate and unified. Captain. What followed was 3 hours of the most brutal, desperate combat Jax had ever experienced. The human ships fought like nothing the Kraven had encountered. When shields failed, they kept fighting. When weapons overheated, they rammed. When the Kraven tried to surround them, the humans turned it into a close-quarters brawl where the bigger ships couldn't bring their superior numbers to bear effectively. The Indomitable took hits that would have destroyed most ships and kept firing. The Valkyrie lost her main engines and used maneuvering thrusters to spin in place, becoming a rotating gun platform. The Maelstrom's captain actually laughed as she used a dying Kraven ship as a shield against its own allies. Jax lost track of how many enemy ships they disabled. His uniform was soaked with sweat, his hands gripping the command chair as the ship shook from impacts. They destroyed or crippled 8 Kraven vessels, but more kept coming. "Sir, the Valkyrie is venting atmosphere. They're calling for... Send the Maelstrom to cover them. Bring us about. We'll hold the line." That's when the cavalry arrived. "Captain, multiple jump signatures. It's 7th Fleet." 20 human warships tore into the system like avenging angels. The USS Thunderchild, the fleet's dreadnought and a ship that had earned her reputation in the Outer Colonies War, emerged at the head of the formation, her massive frame bristling with enough firepower to crack a moon. Admiral Zhao's voice came through on the command channel. "Captain Rivera, we received your message. Thought you might need a hand. All ships, weapons free. Show these raiders what happens when they pick on civilians." The tide turned instantly. The Kraven had been brutal bullies facing desperate prey and 3 insane Deathworlders. Now they faced a fleet that had been specifically designed to fight against overwhelming odds and win anyway. The battle lasted another 40 minutes. When it ended, 22 Kraven ships were destroyed, and the remaining 8 were fleeing the system at maximum speed. 7th Fleet let them go, but not before the Thunderchild put a warning shot across their bow that was really just showing off. "Stand down from battle stations," Jax ordered, slumping in his chair. "Damage report." "We're a mess, sir, but everyone's alive. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 9. Shields at 15%. Half our weapons are offline. But we're still flying." "The Valkyrie?" "Banged up worse than us, but stable. Maelstrom reports they're just getting started, sir." Jax smiled tiredly. "That's Taurus for you. Chen, are we getting anything from the planet?" "Multiple transmissions. They're asking who we are." "Tell them..." Jax paused, thinking. "Tell them we're friends. And ask if they need humanitarian assistance." The response came in less than a minute. And this time, it was a video feed. The being on screen was like nothing Jax had seen. Tall, slender, with skin that seemed to shimmer in soft blues and silvers. 6 fingers on each hand. Eyes that were entirely too large and currently glistening with what he recognized as tears. She wore robes that suggested formality, and she was visibly shaking. "I am Ambassador Aisha of the Pelen sovereignty," she said, her voice melodic even through the translator. "You came. Our message reached the collective, and we hoped they would send someone, but we didn't know, we never expected. Ma'am, I'm Captain Jackson Rivera of the United Earth Space Navy. Your distress call reached us. We're not part of your collective, but we don't need to be to help people in trouble." Aisha's tears were flowing freely now. "You fought for us. You were outnumbered. You could have died. We are not your allies, not your people. Why would you risk everything?" Jax thought about how to answer that. "Where I come from, Ambassador, there's an old saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. We heard you calling for help. That made it our business. But the cost, your ships are damaged. Your people could have been killed. For strangers. That's kind of what we do, ma'am. Though I'll admit, this is our first time doing it for a species we just met." He smiled gently. "How many casualties do you have down there? What do you need?" Over the next 6 hours, 7th Fleet became a humanitarian mission. Medical teams shuttled down to Pella's Prime. Engineering crews helped repair orbital infrastructure. The Thunderchild's fabrication bays started producing emergency supplies. Jax himself went down to the surface with a diplomatic team, And that's when he truly understood what they'd saved. Pelen's Prime was extraordinary. Cities built into living forests, technology seamlessly integrated with nature. Art everywhere, murals, sculptures, gardens that were themselves masterpieces. The Pelen people were gentle, creative, and so completely unprepared for violence that seeing his Marines in combat gear made them nervous. Alessandra met him at what remained of the capital's central plaza. Up close, she was even more striking, graceful in a way that made Earth's gravity seem crude. Her robes were singed from fires, and exhaustion lined her face, but she carried herself with dignity. They are 14 days away. By the time they arrive, we would have been. She couldn't finish. But they will come? Jax asked. You have allies? Yes. The Tethron Collective is a federation of peaceful species. We have mutual defense agreements, but their fleets are far away, designed more for deterrence than rapid response. The Kraven have raided the edges of our space before, but never this boldly. Never a full assault. They walked through the plaza as relief workers moved around them. Pelen civilians watched the humans with a mixture of awe and fear. Jax noticed parents pulling children closer when Marines walked by. They're afraid of us, he observed quietly. Alessandra hesitated. Captain, we received some information about your people from the Collective's databases after you arrived. Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world, one of the most hostile environments known to support complex life. Your species evolved as persistence hunters, apex predators who can endure injuries that would kill most beings. Your culture has thousands of years of near-constant warfare. You build weapons as instinctively as we build gardens. And that scares them. You saved us. But yes, Captain, it scares them. You fight with a ferocity we've only seen in species like the Kraven. The difference is you chose to use that ferocity to protect instead of destroy. That makes you terrifying and admirable in equal measure. Jax stopped walking. Ambassador, I need you to understand something. Yes, humans come from a harsh world. Yes, we know violence in a way peaceful species might not. But we also know beauty, kindness, compassion. We fight so that people like your citizens don't have to. The fact that we're good at it doesn't make us monsters. Thus, Sandra's expression softened. I didn't mean to suggest. I know, but your people need to know it too. We're here to help, not to conquer. The universe has enough predators. We're trying to be something else. What are you trying to be? Protectors, I guess. Friends, if you'll let us. She was quiet for a moment. Then, to his surprise, she reached out and touched his hand. Her 6 fingers were cool against his skin. You risked your lives for strangers. You asked nothing in return. You don't behave like any warrior species in recorded history. I think, Captain Rivera, that perhaps we need to expand our definition of what warriors can be. Over the next week, something remarkable happened. 7th Fleet remained in orbit, providing aid and security. The Tethron Collective fleet arrived and was stunned to find humans already there, having driven off the Kraven and saved millions of lives. Jax found himself in constant meetings with collective representatives, diplomats from a dozen species, all trying to understand what humanity wanted. The answer, nothing, we were just helping, seemed to confuse them more. But it was the time he spent with Alessandra that he valued most. She became his guide to Pelen culture, and he became hers to humanity's complexity. They walked through recovering cities, talking about art and philosophy and the strange coincidences that had brought them together. Your distress call was meant for the Collective, Jax said one evening as they stood on a balcony overlooking a city that was slowly rebuilding. Instead, you got us. How do you feel about that? Thus, Andra was quiet, her bioluminescent markings glowing softly in the twilight. Truthfully? Grateful. And curious. Your people are nothing like I expected, Captain. You're warriors, yes, but you're also poets and dreamers. Your Marines help rebuild homes between patrols. Your medical staff treat our people with such gentleness. You contain contradictions. That's humanity in a nutshell. We're complicated. So I'm learning. She turned to him. The Collective Council wants to meet with Earth's government. They're proposing a formal alliance. How do you feel about that? I think the galaxy is more dangerous than we wanted to believe. The Kraven have grown bold. There will be others like them. And the collective's philosophy of peaceful deterrence. She gestured to the scarred city. It wasn't enough. We need allies who can actually fight. Who will fight for the right reasons. You want humanity in the collective. I want humanity as a friend. The collective is how we formalize that. But more than politics, Captain, I want to know your people better. I want to understand how a species can be so fierce and so kind simultaneously. Jack smiled. That's going to take some time. Do you have somewhere else to be? He looked at her, this elegant, intelligent being from a world of gardens and art, who'd watched her civilization nearly burn and still chose hope over fear. You know, Ambassador, I really don't. She smiled, and it was like sunrise. Call me SOS. And perhaps you could tell me more about Earth? I've heard your world has oceans that cover most of the surface. We have nothing like that. It sounds terrifying and beautiful. It is. But I could show you if you wanted. Once things are stable here. Her bioluminescent markings flickered. Something he'd learned meant surprise and pleasure. You would take me to your death world? I would take you to my home. There's a difference. They stood together as the stars emerged above Pele's prime. Two beings from impossibly different worlds, brought together by an SOS that had reached farther than anyone intended. Behind them, Human and Pelen worked side by side to rebuild. Above them, 7th Fleet maintained watch alongside collective vessels. 3 months later, the formal treaties were signed. Earth joined the Tethron Collective as both a member and protector species. Pele's prime was fully rebuilt, more beautiful than before. And the Kraven learned a very hard lesson about attacking peaceful civilizations that had made friends with Deathworlders. Jax stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, preparing to depart for Earth with a diplomatic convoy that included SOS. Admiral Zhao had promoted him to Commodore and given him command of the newly formed Joint Defense Initiative, a combined human and collective force designed to respond to exactly the kind of crisis that had started all this. Nervous? Commander Okonkwo asked him. About taking a Pelen ambassador to meet Earth's leadership? Terrified. She's good for you, sir. Makes you think about more than tactics and duty. Jack smiled. Yes, she does. OSS entered the bridge, now wearing a uniform that was a blend of Pelen and human design. Her role as liaison between their peoples made manifest. She moved to stand beside him, and their hands found each other naturally. Ready to see Earth? He asked. Ready to be terrified and amazed, she replied. I've been studying your planet's ecology. Captain. Jax, your world has creatures that hunt in your oceans that are larger than our spacecraft. You have storms that could level cities. How did your species survive long enough to develop civilization? We're stubborn, and we look after each other. You'll see. The Indomitable's engines thrummed to life. Around them, a fleet of human and collective ships prepared to make the jump to Sol, the former unexplored system that was now the most talked about place in the galaxy. Chen, Jax ordered, take us home. The jump was smooth, and they emerged into Earth's solar system to a hero's welcome. Hundreds of ships, fireworks in zero-G, communications channels flooded with celebrations. Humanity had made first contact, saved millions of lives, and earned a place in a galactic community that was still reeling from the revelation that the potentially hazardous system had actually contained their saviors. OSS stood at the viewport, watching Earth rotate below, that beautiful blue marble of oceans and clouds that had forged a species strong enough to face down raiders without hesitation and gentle enough to rebuild cities for strangers. Jax, she said softly, when we sent that SOS, we were hoping for soldiers. We got so much more. What did you get? She looked at him, her large eyes reflecting Earth's blue light. We got friends. Protectors. Partners. We got hope. She squeezed his hand. We got you. Best wrong number in history, he said with a grin. She laughed, a sound like wind chimes that made everyone on the bridge smile. The best. Though I suspect the universe has a sense of humor. Our call was meant for distant allies. Instead, it found the one species in the galaxy crazy enough to fight impossible odds for people they'd never met. Not crazy, Jax corrected. Human. There's a difference. Is there? Okay, maybe not a big one. As the Indomitable descended toward Earth, Andra of the Pelen Sovereignty held hands with Commodore Jackson Rivera of Earth, and thought about how a desperate SOS meant for expected allies had instead summoned the Deathworlders fleet. And how that was the best thing that could have possibly happened. Because the universe didn't need more predators or more victims. It needed protectors. And humanity, for all its contradictions and chaos and combat prowess, had proven they were willing to be exactly that. The SOS was meant for allies. It summoned something better. It summoned friends.